On Thursday, an important piece of U.S. media history was made. The January 6th committee held its first live primetime hearing.
And it was a careful, thoughtful unfolding of the events of that day. What was done, what wasn't done, some unbelievable footage.
And the opening of a complex trial. It had just one objective: to tell the truth about what happened on January 6th. The conclusion, so far, was that it was a planned coup.
Today, we're going to unpack the first of 6 hearings and why Fox News chose not to cover what was clearly a news event. I'm Laura Fitton. This is Future Forward.
I am Steven Rosenbaum. Let us launch. Hey, Laura.
Hey, what a strange week to live through and watch and be alive for.
You know, I have to say, I went into it with very low expectations. I thought it was going to be more he said, she said, blah, blah. And about 20 minutes in, I was like, you know, I mean, I'm a news junkie. I read and watch everything, or as much as I can, including, not an insignificant amount of Fox News, and you read Breitbart and all that stuff. Despite all of that, I learned a lot. And I think it will turn out to be important in ways that we're going to talk about today.
And I'm going to caveat this entire episode by saying I did not watch the hearing. I was not emotionally, physically, energetically up for it Thursday night. So all my comments are going to be based on secondhand coverage that I read. So I just want to say that right now in case I get stuff wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a right or wrong here. Here's the first thing. We live in a moment in which the media colors everything we do, everything we consume, everything we share. And I use the word media social media, whatever that means now, platforms, mainstream media, right-wing media, TikTok, you name it. But breaking through to reach real people who are exhausted and dealing with gas prices and their kids, graduation and all the other things we're all dealing with, is very, very, very hard. And it's a mix of being thoughtful and being a little theatrical. And, it is a performance. And I thought that the committee, I've been a media person my whole life. I've made films. I was a Getty photographer. I've run 3 or 4 media companies. Getting it right down to the periods and commas is very hard. And the decision to lay it out with a mix of tape and narrative and witnesses and kind of like bring you into the story, I thought was masterfully well done.
And that showed through even, second or third hand, the way I watched it, right? Only watching little clips that were shared on social, seeing what commentators I trust said about what was being presented. I was shocked that some of these seditionists had embedded documentary crews with them filming planning meetings. Like, wow.
Yeah, I did not realize, for example, that the head of the Oath Keepers was the former head of Donald Trump's Hispanic, election committee. He had an office in the White House. I mean, these are not grassroots organizations. Anyway, we're going to walk through this very meticulously, and Fox News is going to play a big part in this pod. So for listeners who don't want to hear about Fox News's culpability or lack thereof, this might be an episode to skip. But
I mean, first off, the thing that was, inescapable, no matter where you were online on Thursday night, was, wow, every channel has preempted their programming to do this, except Fox.
yeah, and maybe let's start with that, because, I have some very strong feelings about this. I think the word
preemption is so rare anymore. Like, I'm not just saying news channels, it's every channel.
The word news has some obligation to it. Yes, we live in a time when one could argue CNN has its own objectives, and MSNBC another, and the Wall Street Journal another, and the New York Times another. But collectively, news organizations do some basic things. They check facts. They get multiple sources. They make corrections. They consider themselves to be, in their own way, recording history in real time. And the best way I can describe it, if you lived across the street from a firehouse, and God forbid your house caught on fire, and you looked across the street and there were all the firemen sitting around a coffee table playing poker, and they didn't get up and put on their uniform and get in the truck and come over and put out the fire, you wouldn't call them firemen.
No.
If you went to the airport to get on your flight and the guy who was wearing the captain's uniform was sitting behind the bar serving drinks, and you said, "Hey, the plane's supposed to leave," and he said, "Yeah, I'm a bartender now." Like there are certain roles that we play. If you're a news person, you cover news.
Yeah, but if you're an extremist propaganda channel, you obscure news, and that is clearly what happened.
And I guess my question to my cable company, for example, is, since we now know that the bulk of Fox's revenue comes from cable fees that I pay and that you pay if you pay for cable, why are they allowed to charge cable users a built-in fee that comes off the top of my cable bill when they're clearly, by the way, they're not only are they not a news organization, they used to have this distinction where they would say, well, during the day we're news and at night we're opinion. That was and the audience should know that, Tucker isn't really news and Hannity isn't news. They're opinion programs. We're not labeling them as opinion programs, but we know they are. They've stopped that little charade. And, I would argue that one of the things we can do, whatever your politics is, let's let conservatives, liberals, centrists, whatever they are, they cover the news. They can have their own opinions on the news in opinion programs, but in the part where they're covering facts, they should report facts. And
this was, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's it.
Sorry, I keep jumping on your pauses, and then an end comes out, and I realize, I'm done. This is what I was trying to say on our last episode when I said, didn't the media used to be held responsible by government to some extent? Didn't it used to not be possible to just flat out lie all the time? And especially such a heavily regulated media space as cable. Cable companies are essentially monopolies. They have, bundled these services together where you can't break them up and pick and choose and say, no, my money doesn't go to Fox. My money has to go to everything that's on there, except for the, add-on tiers of channels. And they all operate by the grace of local, state, and federal government regulation. That physical hardware they've built, the infrastructure they've run, it's just bonkers to me that you can incite violence on a public media airway.
So we don't have to get into I just don't want to leave that hanging out there. So the FCC controls broadcasting.
I understand it's not the FCC, right? But there's enough regulatory involvement in cable that somebody should be the adult at some point here.
Well, it's a subject for another pod. I actually think cable is essentially unregulated. I mean, the cost of cable is regulated through the Public Service Commission. But you're right. I mean, it is anyway. But moving back to the January 6th and going forward, my immediate reaction on Wednesday was, why would they do this on a Thursday in June? And is there really anything new that people don't know about? And what they've staged with great precision is 6 committee hearings. So the next one is Monday morning at 9 a.m. And they laid out, Liz Cheney laid out essentially the way you would a trial. She said, here's what we're going to prove, ladies and gentlemen. And she laid out the scope of the journey. And now they're going to do 6 different committee hearings, each on a subset of it. So it's going to have its own, and the idea is that each beat will build on itself. And it's interesting, to watch Trump respond essentially in real time on his own social network. But for example, when his daughter criticized him and essentially sided with Bill Barr and said this whole, the election was stolen, is fraudulent, was fake news, I believe Barr's comment was that those charges were bullshit. What they're trying to do is paint Trump into a corner where, all the things he did, or in this case, didn't do. I mean, maybe didn't do is going to be that's tomorrow morning's hearing. And it's going to be pretty critical, which is, so if you're the president and you get a call from the football and they say, Mr. President, the Russians have fired nuclear weapons at the United States. We have 8 seconds to press the button to respond. And you say, yeah, I'm really busy right now. Can I get back to you in say 3 hours? Like, that's a dereliction of duty, whether or not you believe we should fire nuclear weapons back at the Russians or not.
Oh, he wasn't busy.
For 3 hours, he sat there and watched TV and let the federal government be under attack and did absolutely nothing. It's
generous to say he let it be under attack as to say, instead of saying he orchestrated that attack. But yeah, no, I mean, it's a little shocking, the evidence they have. It's stark to see, things play out in real time. There's a clip I just saw of somebody wearing a MAGA hat, a red hat with 45 on it, screaming at Capitol Police, right? And there's lots of clips where people with red hats are screaming at Capitol Police. But this guy is saying, holy, call for backup. This is the U.S. Capitol. You can't let this happen. And I'm like, bro, you're in the mob that's doing this.
Yeah.
Come on. How naive were you?
Yeah. I mean, not to jump to the scariest stuff that's been keeping me up at night, but, we're watching this hearing take place as we're watching the Uvalde, Texas story unravel. And the federal government debate about the smallest, most insignificant firearms controls, which they're going to eventually turn down. And here's the question I would ask our listeners. Does anybody believe that what happened on January 6th won't happen again? Question 1. And then question 2, does anybody believe that the next time that crowd gathers and marches on the Capitol, that they will not be carrying AR-15s? The Capitol Police have pistols. So
and not all of them had those. Like, there was something about how the police were armed. I didn't read the whole article, so I didn't get the full thing, but they were a little bit underarmed. I don't know.
Now, the National Guard would have arrived wearing body armor and with long guns, but they weren't called. And what's interesting to me is not only were they not called, but a number of people, including the vice president's office, tried to call them. And somehow, I don't know that they'll get into this, but somehow Trump's inaction was able to stall the movement of the National Guard for 3 hours.
Yeah, and I don't for a second think that was a coincidence.
So it makes you wonder, though, who is literally the president? I mean, my understanding is that the mayor of Washington called the National Guard, the mayor of the city of Washington, and was told, we're looking into it.
Yeah, was lied to. And
Yeah.
check it out, all the free speech crazies who've been screaming about Twitter and Truth Social and all that, right? What did Truth Social start doing as soon as people started sharing actual news that was going on around January 6th? Started deleting the posts.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Really?
Free speech. Of course. It's not about free speech. It's about propaganda and chaos. All of this is about propaganda and chaos.
I pulled a lot of links today. Usually I pull 3 or 4 articles, but today I pulled 15. And in part because there's a drumbeat of questions about Fox News or Fox. I almost don't want to call it that anymore. Maybe I should just call it Fox.
Fox Channel.
Fox Channel. That seems like a good thing to do. Let's start calling it Fake Fox.
The faux channel. Faux news is the other nickname I've heard.
Yeah.
That I like.
So in watching on Thursday night, so again, spirit of full disclosure, I wasn't planning on watching it. And then we agreed we'd watch for a few minutes, and I was like, I think I can tolerate about 10 minutes of this. And I watched the whole thing. And they were able to pull together footage, body cam footage, fixed position camera footage from inside the Capitol that for anyone that watched it, the idea that it was democracy in action and that this was people, taking a tour of the Capitol as part of their summer vacation, or their winter vacation, it's just, it's just not.
Those are all lies. You can watch the 2-minute. The only thing I have watched, aside from that video I talked about, the guy with the hat, was the 2-minute compilation where they kind of narratively went through each of the breaches. It went from body cam footage to their own documentary footage that they were stupidly shooting of themselves committing crimes. And just that 2 minutes is bone crunching, shocking, horrifying.
This is a Vanity Fair piece that caught my eye, and the headline is Fox News hosts conveniently ignore the news of their private January 6th fears. Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, Brian Kilmeade would later question Trump supporters' role in the Capitol attacks, had privately tried to get the president to stop the violence.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very powerful place where someone had taken all 4 headshots and then overlaid quotes of what they were texting the president at the time.
So it makes you wonder, was Rachel Maddow calling the White House? Was CNN calling the White House? Was Don Lemon calling the White House? What lines are blurred when the people that are covering you are actually political advisors telling you to make it stop? And they're texting Mark Meadows. I don't have Mark Meadows, phone, text, email address. Do you? That's a level of access to the federal government that's pretty dramatic.
And it's a level of very obvious bias.
Here, so this is zeroed in on Donald Trump Jr.'s message that things had gone too far. Having sat in my share of edit rooms, I can tell you that when you have 30 pieces of media to tell a particular beat of a story, and you have to pick one, that can be a very emotional, very difficult editorial decision to make. And, somehow, what was interesting to me was clearly, particularly Liz Cheney, was able to walk into each clip they were going to show as if she knew what was about to be played. So that's hours worth of rehearsal to get that down to knowing, there was no oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were going to show something else there. A level of preparation and detail. And there are going to be different presenters for each of the 6 hearings.
And that's how an investigation should work, right? Yes, that is how good media is made, but a good investigation needs to thoroughly consider every fact figure out the best way and fairest way to show them and explain them very clearly.
Yeah, which is, by the way, part of why I object to this whole "will it make a difference" question. It's like, you know, I mean, we have trials across America every day. We have people accused of crimes every day. None of them are, are taken on because they're gonna, like, if there's an injustice, you prosecute the injustice. And hopefully the jury system and the American justice system is such that the people that are wrongly accused are cleared. And we know this is not always true, but hopefully. I'm gonna put the Vanity Fair article in the show notes because I think if you're only gonna read one thing, it's pretty telling. So this is an NPR headline. Only one major cable news channel did not carry the January 6th hearings live, Fox News. It makes you wonder, did they have a meeting and did Hannity and Tucker say to their boss, hey, listen, we should cover this live because we can kick the crap out of it. We'll fact check it in real time and we'll call bullshit on the and they were told, no, we don't even want our listeners, our viewers, to have access to it, even with our framing of it. We don't trust them not to hear through our, dismissal of it, something that might turn the tides.
I mean, I think, even now, Trump's entire strategy for dealing with the reality around him is, every tweet about this, he calls them the unselect committee, right? He's still trying to bully. He's still being petty. And so even just covering it makes it valid. Even if all the viewers watched it, hated it, didn't believe any of it, the fact that the camera is aimed on it makes it a real thing, and Trump is still trying to pretend it's not a real thing. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing you they don't exist. This isn't happening. This isn't real. It's fake news, has been his approach from day one. I mean, I sat in a bar in DC or a restaurant in DC after marching in the Women's March the day after this guy ended up in office, and was shocked to look up at my TV and see Spicer just standing there saying, oh yeah, the Women's March didn't happen. There were hardly any people there, just focusing on the inauguration and telling outright lies about how many people were there. I was just like, what? And that note has never changed and probably will never change with that guy. And, if he's operating under the influence and money and control of the people whose influence, money, and control I believe him to be operating under, it's not going to change. So it doesn't shock me at all that they'd be so egregious because their audience doesn't care. Their audience wants to believe it's fake. They desperately want to believe this is all fake. They desperately want to believe that the story of the drama in the people who are rising up in cities and we must squelch them and all that, they just want to believe that all those lies are true.
But what does Fox gain out of that? I mean, Rupert's how old? 95? 87? I don't know.
I mean, they gain the money that's keeping it going. That's what they gain. Same thing the NRA gains. The money that's keeping it going. And we would love to know I would love to see journalists report more about the money that is keeping both Fox and the NRA going.
So I pulled up an article from the Washington Post. It's April 4th, so it's, a little bit previous to now, but totally relevant, and this is Philip Bump writing, and he says, the unique damaging role Fox News plays in the American media.
Is exactly the role it was scripted, designed, and funded to play. Yep, that's it.
So here's a puzzling thing. One of the things I believe both about gun violence and about what's going on with Fox is saying the name of the people behind it so that they have to be responsible when they get in the elevator at their New York condo or land at an airport, or like Fox News is not an entity. It's a board of directors. It's a family of owners. And so, my memory was that Paul Ryan was on the Fox board. And here's what's odd. Maybe our listeners can help me with this. So this is an article from 2019. Paul Ryan is named to the board of directors of Fox. Fine. Then if you go forward a little bit, this is 2022. And this is Fox board member Paul Ryan unironically blasting the entertainment of the media business. Basically blasting the bias of news media. So this is recent. This is May of 2022. So if you go to the Fox website, so if you go to this is the Wikipedia page for Fox News. Their board members are not listed on the Wikipedia page. That seems fixable. Just jump in and edit that maybe when I get off. But here's the thing that I found oddest. If you this is the wrong page, but if you go to the Fox News, who is on the board website, here, this is News Corp. This is today. This is the board of directors: Rupert Murdoch, Lachlan Murdoch, Peter Barnes.
You need the Fox. You need the Fox Corporation one.
So
FoxCorporation.com.
Not News Corp.
Company, yeah, but it still doesn't include Paul Ryan. There is a posted board of directors under executive team for FoxCorporation.com, and the board of directors there are Rupert, Lachlan, John P. Nallen, Viet D. Din. I don't know how to pronounce his name correctly. Steve Tomsic, Michael Biard, Paul Cheesebro, Marianne Gambelli, Kevin Lord, Danny O'Brien, Jeff Taylor, Brian Nick, and Gabrielle Brown. And that's the Fox Corporation. Oh, wait, sorry. No, I was on the executives, not the board of directors. All right, let's see if Paul Ryan is included on this one. Again, Rupert Lachlan, William Burke, Chase Carey, Ann Dias, Roland Hernandez, Jacques Nasser, and Paul Ryan. Yeah, he is listed.
All right, good.
I'll give you
So
that link.
put that in the chat, because to me, those are the people whose names should be coming up every day. I mean, they all have a vote. Now, maybe they're all bought and paid for. Maybe they all get, whatever. But,
But
at some point,
the blood is on their hands.
that's my feeling. And same thing with guns. Let's look, who's on the Remington board. Let's get the names. Let's say their names. Because I don't think these institutions should operate in an invisible cloak of secrecy. I just don't.
I mean, and so much of the money behind them is already in an invisible cloak of secrecy. So all I'll say is, if you were an extremely wealthy foreign power that controlled a lot of money and wanted to stow chaos in the U.S., how would you do that?
Well, we got plenty of chaos. That is certainly for sure. Well, this has been an interesting program, a little different for us. Thank you for going on this journey, and hopefully we'll get feedback and people will watch the additional committee meetings and the investigations, and we'll see what comes of it.
Hopefully we will all learn more and all get to the truth.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Have a great week. Take care.
I gotta find there. Come on. I was gonna play the. There it is.